Well, good morning and welcome. My name's John Faulkner. I chair the Whitlam Institute, and I want to warmly welcome everyone to this morning's dedication. On this day, we celebrate the protection in perpetuity of the home where Gough Whitlam, Labor's longest-serving federal leader, lived with his family. He lived in that house for 15 years until his election as Prime Minister of Australia, which of course occurred on this day exactly 50 years ago. We have many special guests with us, but I want to particularly mention two, both of whom, like Gough, have led the Australian Labor Party. Barry Unsworth, who led the party here in New South Wales and served as Premier. Simply put, we wouldn't be here today without Barry's efforts. And a little more of that later. And of course, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who shares with Gough Whitlam the great achievement of leading the Australian Labor Party to victory in a federal election from opposition. Since the Great Depression, more than 90 years ago now, only 4 Labor leaders have achieved that feat. Gough Whitlam was the first in 1972. Anthony Albanese, the most recent, just this year, as you know, nearly half a century later. Nothing could give me greater pleasure than to welcome Prime Minister Anthony Albanese here today. I would also like to acknowledge others who have served or are serving in federal, state and local government. Board members and senior representatives from the Whitlam Institute and Western Sydney University. A number of generous benefactors, along with others who've played a critical role in the protection and preservation of this property. And very importantly, I welcome members of the Whitlam family. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicholas Howie, a Darug man and good friend of the Whitlam Institute, currently studying at Western Sydney University to become a physics teacher, will now welcome us to country. Thanks, Nicholas.
Bajari Mulinawul. Good morning. My name is Nicholas Howie, as mentioned. I'm a proud Darug man of the Borborongal clan, and I study at Western Sydney University with the intention of becoming a high school physics teacher. It is my privilege today to welcome you to my country. It seems only fitting to talk about home. It's a difficult word to define, and I dare say that everyone has a slightly different meaning. For example, I asked a teacher I was working with yesterday how he defined home. He considered it a bit before responding. My home is at my house. I don't bother to distinguish the two. A lucky man, to be sure. For me growing up, home was an abstract concept, a place that I carried in my backpack between houses or to and from school. In truth, my young life was fantastic, but I was being pulled in so many different directions that I never quite felt settled. So, home became the things that were constant to me. Some grounding objects that I carried with me, my relentless honesty, and the knowledge that wherever I go, whatever I do, my mother loves me. When I have these things, wherever I am, I'm home. The most important to me, however, was the people. Being exposed to so many different types of people, so many different homes, gave me the chance to shape my own. I was able to make it look how I wanted. And my home now has the people that I love, it has good food, some comforts, and the freedom to express myself. But it's still not in one place. In some ways, I suppose, I still carry my home in a backpack, taking various elements out of the bag as required. My social home is with my mum, brother, or very close friends. My physical home is my flat in Penrith, but my spiritual home is anywhere on Darug country, specifically in the Richmond Basin area or Lower Blue Mountains. I can go anywhere in my country and feel at home. Although simple, this story is repeated time and time again across all of Australia. The journey of finding our home is a shared journey in this country. And I've learned that home isn't assigned or given. It's something that we build and grow with those that we care about. The reason that I'm talking about this today is because 50 years ago, a man who lived at this very house took office and subsequently helped more Australians than ever before make this country their home. The incredible efforts of that man and his team thrust Australia onto the world stage as a genuine, independent country for the first time. Gough Whitlam has a national story and legacy which continues to inspire us all today, which is, of course, why we're here. He also understood something very important. The more Australians that are safe, comfortable, and connected to the country, that is, the more Australians that can call this place their home, the better off that we will be as a nation and as individuals. He also understood that Aboriginal culture is the culture of this place. The land, plants, and animals all evolved alongside our culture. Apologies, I've lost my place. As we look after this beautiful country, he understood something that I am still learning myself. It's easy to see Aboriginal culture as being only for Aboriginal people. It's easy and wrong. In this land, country speaks through all of us. And Gough knew that this land holds knowledge that now the land is gifting back to us all. You are just as connected to this land as I am. This is just as much your home as it is mine. This place means as much to you as it does to me. Because of this, I can't welcome you to country today as visitors. You were once, but now the future of my home sits in your voice as much as it does in mine. So didjurigor, thank you. Didjurigor, yana janawi bulbulwul ingami. Thank you for walking with me and strengthening my spirit. May we continue to yanama bajari gumara together, walk with good spirit. May his legacy continue to push us to a more equitable and sustainable future for all. Warami, Walabalami, welcome wherever you have come from. Welcome to our home.
Well, thank you, Nicholas, and on behalf of everyone here, let me acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past and present. Ladies and gentlemen, the Whitlam family home went on the market in January 2021. To say it was only dilapidated and decaying would not be to tell the whole story. And I think you have seen some of the photographs of the house at that time. There had been little, if any, care for the house for decades. But on the positive side, this meant it was not only untouched, but had remained largely unchanged from the time it was built. 2 years ago, the chances of saving this house looked bleak. Enter Barry Unsworth, who took the lead in forming a company, Whitlam Heritage Home Limited, to purchase the home and save it for the nation. And in February last year, the company acquired the home with loans of $1.25 million from Pauline and Barry Unsworth. In June last year, the federal government pledged $1.3 million and a grant for the purchase and restoration of the home. Progress, albeit slow, in negotiations between the Commonwealth and Western Sydney University, and great work by the university staff enabled the university to purchase the property from Whitlam Heritage Home Limited in April this year. And the good news is the first instalment of the federal funding was paid last Friday, with a final instalment payable later this month. But friends, more important than anything else, as you can see, a heritage asset of the nation has been saved. And of course, for those of us in the Labor Party, today is a very special day as we celebrate the election of the Whitlam government on the 2nd of December 1972. But saving the Whitlam family home is not just an achievement for Labor true believers to celebrate. It's very much about preserving our nation's history. And that's a responsibility we all share. And it's why the protection of 32 Albert Street Cabramatta has been so widely welcomed. Friends, the future care and custodianship of the Whitlam family home will be a responsibility of the Whitlam Institute and Western Sydney University. I take this opportunity to thank the university for the wonderful progress we've already seen here at Albert Street, and I invite Professor Claire Pollock, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost of Western Sydney University, to speak to us.
Thank you, John. Prime Minister, distinguished guests, and particularly to the members of the family. On behalf of the Vice-Chancellor, who unfortunately just can't be with us here today, he's been dragged away with some matters around the University Accord, which is a wonderful initiative of the federal government, but has dragged the Vice-Chancellor away today. I welcome you here to what is the newest and perhaps most unique piece of property for Western Sydney University that we are absolutely delighted to have been part of restoring and taking care of in perpetuity. This is certainly not the university's oldest building. That honour belongs to the Female Orphan School on our Rydalmere campus, which houses the Whitlam Institute. That was built in 1813. And that property, like this one, started off its life serving a purpose and will now find a new purpose for generations to come. It is absolutely amazing to see the transformation that has taken place in this building. I first saw the building in June last year. It was my first week at the university. I have to say there was an intake of breath when I realised what we were taking on as a university. However, I have to say the tireless work of the members of the university, of the board of trustees of the board of the Whitlam Institute, collaboratively with Barry Unsworth and with the Commonwealth Government, has meant we've been able to progress this to a point where we can ensure enduring custodianship of this Prime Ministerial home. All of us that have been involved shared a commitment to the same outcome, to see 32 Albert Street Cabramatta protected, restored and reimagined for a new future, one which pays homage to the public services of Australia's 21st Prime Minister. Western Sydney University is proud to be an anchor institution in this region, and through its support of this most wonderful project, to help bring an important part of not only Western Sydney's political history, but also part of the nation's political history to its rightful place in the national estate. I'd particularly like to acknowledge within the university the involvement of the number of teams who variously worked with the Whitlam Institute, its board and the Whitlam family members. And I'll particularly call out the members of the Office of Estate and Commercial who've overseen this transformation, whilst concurrently ensuring that the building's architectural design continues to be a key feature. We look forward to continuing working with the Whitlam family and the board of the Whitlam Institute and the Institute itself as custodians of this building for years to come. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claire. Two people with us today have lived in this house, Nick Whitlam and Catherine Dovey. Both have also served on the board of the Whitlam Institute. Nick was our board chair. Catherine currently represents the family as a member of the Institute board. Please welcome Catherine Dovey to speak to us.
Good morning. I'm not a speech giver, so I'm going to read my notes. But you've gathered I'm Catherine, number 4 child. I came to live here in 1957 at the age of 3. The family had been living in Cronulla since 1947, which was then considered to be on the fringe of Sydney and where my parents built their first house. In 1952, when my father was first elected as the federal member for Werriwa, the electorate took in the whole Sutherland Shire. Naturally, with population growth, the electoral redistribution of 1955 necessitated major boundary changes to the electorate, and my father moved his family to the heart of the new Werriwa, here in Cabramatta. My parents built this house to accommodate what would inevitably be 6 large people. Surfaces were elevated, door heights were higher than the norm. The 2 elder boys had beds made long. We were the first house on the block of what had previously been a vineyard. There were horse stables opposite and up the road. There was a noticeable lack of community facilities. Our area was unsewered. There was no footpath, curbs or guttering, no municipal swimming pool or library, all matters that informed my father's obsession with proper urban planning. Our good fortune, however, was that the Cabramatta Migrant Hostel welcomed a constant flow of new arrivals, which ensured the area became increasingly multicultural. Up until 1973, when my father was able to establish an electoral office in Liverpool, he had his office at the Federal Members' Rooms at 5 Martin Place. This meant that constituents regularly came to the family home about their concerns. Naturally, given the regular absences of federal politicians from their families, we all became very expert in dealing appropriately with these issues that didn't need referring to state members. I can recall my father boasting about representing as many primary producers as most country party members because of the large number of market gardeners in the electorate. Many a time I would arrive home from school to find on the doorstep a box of tomatoes or some other edible reward for some perceived good deed done for a constituent. No doubt no longer acceptable. After every election, we would host a party for party members, booth workers, supporters and media here at the house. A keg in the carport and Mum making all the food. I well remember the huge street gathering here 50 years ago today when we won the 1972 election. Now that was and still is a night to remember. You know, my mother was an unusually generous and sentimental person. She'd say to me, "It doesn't matter where you live, but who you live with." Well, I lived in a terrific family, in a terrific community when I was young. Over the years, we had left this family home. My mother would insist that we drive past it on an annual basis, and she became very distressed at how dilapidated the house had become. I know she and my father would be thrilled to know that the Commonwealth Government, Western Sydney University and the Whitlam Institute have found a way to restore it and find a good purpose for its use. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, we all owe Barry Unsworth a huge debt of gratitude. This event today could not have happened without him. It was his vision, his drive, his generosity that saved Gough Whitlam's family home. And as well as Barry, I want to thank Pauline Unsworth for her support and publicly acknowledge the other directors of Whitlam Heritage Home Limited, Mark Morey, Mark Lennon and Nick Whitlam. Now, no doubt there are many others as well who answered Barry's call. I mean, he's very hard to ignore, I can assure you. But it's a real pleasure for me to ask you not only to welcome Barry Unsworth, but thank him for his efforts.
Got to put my glasses on. Today is a memorable day in Australian Labor Party history. We gather at the Whitlam home to commemorate the 1972 electoral victory of Gough Whitlam, which was celebrated here. The preservation of 32 Albert Street Cabramatta as a venue for the presentation of an invaluable chapter in Australian social history is an achievement for all involved. The directors of Whitlam Heritage Home, after an initial meeting at the Sydney Trades Hall, went on to form a company, register it as a charity, and proceeded to purchase the house at auction against spirited opposition. After initial work on the home, it was a great relief to the directors to be advised that the Commonwealth Government would grant to the University of Western Sydney sufficient funds to purchase and restore the property. I pay tribute to my fellow directors, Nicholas Whitlam, Mark Lennon and Mark Morey, to John Faulkner, Chair of the Whitlam Institute, for his support and advice, to our solicitor Tim Unsworth and our financiers Pauline Unsworth and myself. As provided in the articles of our company, on behalf of the directors, I present a cheque for the balance of our funds to the Whitlam Institute. Thank you all.
Well, thanks so much, Barry, and for your great work on this. Ladies and gentlemen, the Whitlam Institute's a place which unites two great passions of Gough Whitlam: education and the delivery and development of services to the suburbs of Western Sydney. In recent times at the Institute, we've developed an important relationship with the Business Council of Australia, and much of that is due to its CEO, Jennifer Westacott, who shares those two great passions. We're delighted that Jennifer is now the Chancellor-elect of Western Sydney University, and that we'll be working even more closely with her into the future. Please welcome Jennifer Westacott.
Well, thank you, John. And can I begin by also acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands we meet on today. And I want to thank you, Nicholas, for your gracious and beautiful welcome, which we accept with humility. And commit to you on behalf of the university that we will live up to the aspiration that you have set for us all today. And you make us proud, and you will make us proud. Can I acknowledge members of the Whitlam family who are here today? Can I acknowledge members of the university? Can I particularly pay tribute to Barry Unsworth for his generosity and commitment? Can I acknowledge my dear close friend, the Honourable John Faulkner, and his partner, my lifetime friend, Liz Kirby, and of course acknowledge the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese. It's great to be here in my capacity as the Chancellor-elect of Western Sydney University, which is proud to house and support the Whitlam Institute. And of course, it was Gough Whitlam who actively campaigned to establish a university in Western Sydney. In many respects, we are a creation of Gough Whitlam. He was a son of Western Sydney, a champion of this region, a region that I believe will be the centre of economic, cultural and social opportunity in New South Wales and in Australia in the future. So yes, it's time. It's time we recognised our political leaders. It's time we celebrated their highs and lows. It's time we did as many other countries do, preserve the places our political leaders called home. It's time to share the role they played in shaping our society, their knowledge, their history, with young Australians of today and the generations that will follow. Whenever I travel, I'm always overwhelmed about how little we know about our political leaders and how little we celebrate their history. If you ask most Australians to name former Prime Ministers, probably one of the few names they would give would be either Bob Hawke, Paul Keating, John Howard, and most certainly Gough Whitlam. But we should be better at that. We should be better at celebrating our history. And this House is a way of recognising one of the country's most important political figures. It's also a powerful expression of philanthropy, and again, I want to thank the donors who've helped preserve this important part of history. Paul Keating once famously said that when you change government, you change the country. Well, nothing can be truer of the Whitlam government. This year, we celebrated the 50 years since Gough Whitlam's visit to China, which began decades of prosperity and growth for Australia. But ultimately, politics is a personal journey. And this thoroughly modern man, this towering figure in Australia's public life, who I got to meet only on a couple of occasions, changed mine and my family's future. My house got sewered because of Gough Whitlam. This removed years of embarrassment and humiliation living in a public housing estate with an outside toilet, also the epicentre of the funnel web. He created a lasting social safety net in Australia that meant my mum was able to receive a pension when she separated from my father. He created a health funding model that remains the envy of the world, and which for my family removed the unenviable choice between going to the doctor or going without. My brothers didn't have to fight in a pointless, futile and brutal war. And most importantly, to my life, Gough Whitlam sent me to university. He embedded in our national psyche that education was a right, not a privilege, and that it should be available to every single person in this country as the principal instrument of advancement. I'm proud to stand here today, the Chancellor-elect of a major university, a kid from a public housing estate, and I stand in front of another kid from a public housing estate, a man called Anthony Albanese, who is now Australia's 31st Prime Minister. This House and the people who stand here today are a symbol of Gough Whitlam's legacy. National, international, but profoundly personal. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the Prime Minister, I want to formally thank the Commonwealth Government for its support for the purchase and restoration of the Whitlam family home. I acknowledge again the commitment of the previous federal government in this endeavour. And this is important. Every effort should be made to ensure that honouring our nation's political history and heritage is above the partisan political fray. Friends, on the day the Whitlam government was elected, the 2nd of December 1972, there were huge celebrations, many of them here. It's a famous day in Labor history. The 50th anniversary of that election victory, today, the 2nd of December 2022, is also a very special day. At the Whitlam Institute, our goal was very clear. We wanted to have the dedication of the Whitlam family home to be the highlight of those 50th anniversary celebration. Our fervent hope also was to have the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, join us on this very special day. He has done that. We are very honoured, I am very honoured to have him here. Please welcome Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Well, thank you so much, John. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I thank Nicholas for your very warm and generous welcome to your country. And I say that I'm proud to lead a Labor government that is committed to the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. And that includes a constitutionally enshrined voice to our national parliament, and in the second half of next year, Australians will be given the opportunity to lift our nation up. I do welcome in particular Nicholas Whitlam, Catherine Dovey and every member of the Whitlam family who is here. Federal colleagues and state colleagues, particularly Chris Bowen, who's doing an extraordinary job as the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. I particularly want to single out Barry Unsworth and Pauline for your generosity in making this happen, and to other special guests who are here. Paddy, it's fantastic that you are here as well, Patricia. Distinguished guests, one and all. A great nation such as ours preserves our treasures, honours our legends, and we celebrate our history. And we commemorate the places where that history was made. 50 years ago, people all over Australia voted to change the direction of our nation. It was a vote to modernise Australia. There is a pre-Whitlam period and a post-Whitlam period, and no one can be in any doubt that on the 2nd of December 1972, 50 years ago to the day, Australians changed our nation. After 23 years of drift, decay and torpor, Australians voted for a program of transformation, of modernisation and reform. A vision to restore our sense of fairness, purpose and progress in education, in healthcare and in justice. Like Jennifer Westacott, it changed my life. My mum got to live on a single parent pension. She got the treatment that she needed as then became an invalid pensioner through the healthcare reforms that were put in place. I got to go to university, the first in my family to finish school, let alone achieve that objective. We reimagined our place in the world and our role in the region. It was an opportunity to reconcile with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, to assert the equality of women in our laws, in our society and in our economy, to, as Gough said, to liberate the talents and uplift the horizons of our nation. In declaring its time, Australians rejected the fears and habits of the past and embraced the demands and opportunities of the future. And 50 years ago, around 11 p.m, this street was filled with cheering supporters, lit up by the flash of cameras as Gough Whitlam returned to the humble home in which we now sit. Shaking hands with his friends, his neighbours, his campaign workers. Margaret, as always, by his side, a partner in all things, knowing their lives would be changed forever. Then Gough cleared a small space in the packed living room to address his country as Prime Minister-elect, claiming a very good mandate for the policies of his new government. This is the place where Gough first took up the weight of history and first knew the great privilege of office. For those of us who came out of the womb as Labor voters, we understood the significance of the moment. At just 9 years of age, I remember my mother distinctly celebrating because we won. We won was the way that it was seen. The responsibility and opportunity of government that Whitlam understood so well, the chance to change the nation for the better. This may be the house that Gough lived in, but all of us live in the Australia that Gough Whitlam helped to build. I salute the efforts of all who have worked to acquire and preserve this house, to educate and, yes, inspire future generations. Former Premier Barry Unsworth, who led the Whitlam Heritage Home Group in the initial purchase with Pauline. The Western Sydney University and the Whitlam Institute, who are the custodians of the house, and the $1.3 million grant made in 2021 for the purchase and restoration by the federal government, and I pay tribute to the former Minister, Ben Morton, who I had discussions with about this purchase. It is fitting that we gather here today to honour Gough at a home in the suburbs, because Gough was the first great Prime Ministerial champion of the suburbs. Together with my personal mentor, Tom Uren, they made such an extraordinary difference in such a short period of time. Gough was a passionate advocate for citizens in new and growing communities, for their right to enjoy the same opportunities and be served by the same amenities as Australians in the inner suburbs. He understood the message a government sends to people when it invests in their housing, their infrastructure, their education and their quality of life. A statement of respect for their aspirations, a statement of belief in their potential. It is a truth that every Labor government has honoured and held to since. And I hope that the government that I'm very honoured to lead can continue that example as we have, I believe, in our first 6 months. The understanding that government derives its power from the people and proves its value by serving the people, by converting the promises of a campaign into the progress of a nation. Friends, today is the anniversary of a famous victory. But what this day in Australian history marks, above all else, is the beginning of a new era. Because when Gough Whitlam walked out the door at 32 Albert Street for the first time as Prime Minister-elect, he was taking the first steps on a journey of reform and change, the beginning of delivering a legacy that lives around us, inspires us, guides us, and yes, teaches us. It is a true honour to share this moment with you today. And I'm delighted that all Australians will be able to share in this piece of our nation's history from this day forward. Thanks very much.
I've asked the Prime Minister to stay on the stage because he's got to do the honours with the plaque. And I'd also ask Catherine Dovey and Barry Unsworth to join us on the stage. Right. He's got the drawstring, so yeah. Thanks everyone, and a final word from the Director of the Whitlam Institute, Professor John Jurians.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister Albanese. My name is Professor John Jurians. I am the Director of the Whitlam Institute. It's hard not to remark on patterns in history and connections between the past and the present, especially upon such an auspicious anniversary day as this. A connection I wanted to mention as we conclude today's dedication is between a number of the holders of the office of Prime Minister. Today, we've had the 31st Prime Minister dedicate the home of the 21st Prime Minister. If I may, I wish to dwell upon a very similar moment to this, nearly 50 years ago, when the home of the 16th Prime Minister was dedicated by the 21st Prime Minister. I refer, of course, to the 24th of March, 1973, when the Honourable E.G. Whitlam QC, Prime Minister of Australia, dedicated the cottage of former Prime Minister Ben Chifley in Bathurst. So today is really about continuity in many ways, across time, of our community recognizing our political history as an integral part of our national story. Since I started as the director of the Whitlam Institute in May, I've had the opportunity to meet with colleagues from a number of other prime ministerial institutes and libraries from both sides of the political fence, and have found that all have a strong commitment to collaboratively engage with other institutes and bodies such as the Museum of Australian Democracy to ensure that our understanding of our political present is informed by understanding of our political past. On behalf of the board of the Whitlam Institute and on behalf of Western Sydney University, I would like to thank all of you for your presence here today for the dedication of 32 Albert Street. I invite you to wander again through the home, if you haven't done so already, to enjoy each other's company and to revel in this special occasion. I wish you all the very best on this momentous occasion, the 2nd of December 2022, in recognition of the day 50 years ago, to the day, Thank you for sharing this very special day with us, and have a good afternoon.